What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 15 of the Guerilla Social Work Podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Alpha Counseling and Treatment, who is the largest and most respected provider for justice-involved clients in need of sexual offense-specific treatment services. Alpha is also a JRI-certified agency providing moral recognition therapy and substance use disorder treatment to justice-involved clients. You can be confident that the treatment you will receive with Alpha will help keep you out of the criminal justice system. Alpha clinical professionals are trained and certified in cognitive behavioral interventions for sexual offending. This evidence-based program teaches participants strategies for avoiding sexual offending and related behaviors. The program places heavy emphasis on skill-building activities to assist with cognitive, social, emotional, and coping skills development. Visit their website today at utahsbesttherapy.com, or you can call them directly at 801-645-5455. This episode is also brought to you by Triple S. Triple S provides scientific outcome measures for clinicians in the field of behavioral health. Outcome measures provide direction for both clients and treatment providers using evidence-based practice. Any program not using outcome measures to track their clients' progress and success has been scientifically proven to be less effective. Lastly, this episode is brought to you by Hoddyware. Do you like being left alone when you're working out? Are you sick of people bothering you when you're working out? Well, Hoddyware is activewear for people who just want to work out without the small talk and the nonsense. With Hoddyware, you can let your apparel do the talking for you. Check them out on Instagram. That is Hoddyware, H-A-U-G-H-T-Y, wear, W-E-A-R. Hoddyware. Alrighty, folks. On this episode today, we have the lovely Jamie Newsome, who is here visiting us from University of Cincinnati Corrections Institute. We went out there back in May to do a training on implementing a new group curriculum, which was based off the cognitive behavioral therapy. So she got to sit in, kind of see how things are going, see how the clients are liking that, and we got to get some feedback on how we were doing, which is always fun. Have someone sitting in your groups critiquing you a bit, but it went really well. She was great to work with, so she decided to also join us on the podcast to go into a little detail about their curriculum and how the cognitive behavioral approach has been helping people in the justice system, specifically with sex offenders. So we're going to talk a bit about their research on that and how they got to implement that and how that's been going on our end. It's a really good one. Stay tuned. With the strong, it's a surprise attack with the start always. So there's no like on the air. We're just all of a sudden we're going.
So like, and we're going to start talking right now. Go, Jamie, start talking now.
With the strong and mighty Jamie Newsome, right?
Strong and mighty. I like that.
That's right.
Newsome.
Yeah. Did anybody ever call you like the gruesome Newsome?
Well, it's a married name.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't always have Newsome.
Oh.
Did he ever say that? He's like, like we're the gruesome news. You have like a softball team.
No, I've actually never heard that one. That's pretty good.
No,
though.
it's an original, and you're totally okay to take it home and say,
Thank you.
Guess what, hubby? What's his name?
Tony.
So Tony, when you listen to this, you know that sounds great. Gruesome Newsome. Dude, if I had the last name Newsome, I'd be Mace the Gruesome.
That'd be
Newsome.
cool if you were a football player or wrestler or something. But if you were just like in a band and your name was Gruesome
No,
Newsome.
a softball player would be just fine. Like, it'd be funnier if you're a softball player. You know what I mean? Yeah.
What if they go on like double dates and introduce themselves as the gruesome Newsomes? Maybe.
That's corny double date.
It's actually a really good screener, because if they didn't like it, then we would know like this isn't a good match for double dating anymore. Like they would have to appreciate gruesome Newsome
That's
in order
right.
for me to
Exactly
like
it.
even consider them for a second.
That's good.
Double
Those
date.
screener tests are really good. We were talking about that on another podcast. We were saying that like, so when everybody was single at one point or another, we, like I was saying, by anybody listening to this in Cincinnati, for some reason, Jamie, the gruesome Newsome, does not know who Stipe Miocic is, who is the heavyweight UFC champion right now.
Sorry, Jamie. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a rough homecoming for for you.
Yeah, don't go to school for the next few. But
no one's gonna care.
But we would. So yeah, nobody cared. So we were watching the UFC, and like if you were dating a new girl, you'd bring her over to the UFC, and everybody would, I mean, because like you've seen our personalities before, and they'd come over, and then it would just be a test. And if those girls couldn't hack it, it would be like, well, don't bring that girl around again. You know, she would voluntarily not ever show her face again because she would hate our guts.
Yeah, it's basically throwing them into the fire. Like, if you can handle this, then we could probably date. You'll probably be all right. This is the worst of the worst.
Everybody will know after that first introduction.
That's right.
This isn't good for any of us.
Well, speaking of introductions, what's your role here, Jamie? And is it PhD?
It is PhD.
Holla.
Yeah.
Is that the first one?
Hashtag ballin'.
On our podcast, the first super smart person?
No, Dr. K.
Everyone's been super smart.
Right.
Was a PhD.
You're the second.
Yeah, and everybody's been super smart.
Person.
Everyone is smart in their own way.
Yeah, everybody has, except for some people. Yeah. So, PhD in what?
Criminal justice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay, cool. So, you're from the University of Cincinnati Corrections Institute?
Correct.
Okay. And what do they do there? What's the deal?
We do a lot of stuff there. Most of our work is founded in that risk-need responsivity model. So we're really trying to get evidence-based practices out in the world. And most of the evidence-based practices that we try to promote, train agencies in, and provide a lot of different support in a lot of different ways is in that risk-need responsivity model.
Wow.
Will you detail that a little bit? Risk, need, responsivity. Like,
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, a lot of our listeners aren't familiar with the acronyms and the phrases and terms, and so that'd be helpful.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep it brief. I'll say like late 80s, a group of scholars started working on what works with offenders at that point in time. A lot of people were like, nothing works. We can't really do anything. We should basically lock them up and throw away the key. But there was a small group of scholars who didn't kind of buy into that, and they started doing work on what does work. Some things do actually work, and how can we kind of pull that information together and figure out what the best strategies are. So they did tons and tons of research and compiled it and tried to simplify it in a way that's easy for practitioners to use. So risk, need, responsivity model are the key pieces of that. So risk, we want to target high risk offenders. Need, we want to focus in on their criminogenic needs, which sounds fancy, but it really just means crime producing factors, things that we know are linked to recidivism. And then that responsivity piece really has two parts. The main thing is we want to use interventions that we know work to reduce recidivism. So those tend to be cognitive behavioral therapy, social learning models. And then the specific part of that is tailoring treatment to each individual. So you guys work with lots of different people. They're all different. You see diverse clients, and we want to make sure that you're individualizing what you're doing with them. So
okay,
yeah, I'm glad I had you to find it. You did a bang up job of keeping it concise. That was good.
Thank you.
Except, dude, are you breathing hard into the microphone? I feel like you're breathing so hard.
I think that's the hum.
Hold on.
No,
we'll test it out. Hold on. We'll find out.
What?
So just everyone stop for a minute. That's a power thing. That might not even come through in the podcast.
No. Okay.
It might just be running through the headphones.
I literally have not breathed for 5 minutes. So it's not.
We're going to do a check here.
Yeah, it's not me.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. I found it.
What was it?
You guys talk.
I told you guys.
The cord I brought was the one I purposely threw out because it's crappy. So you guys keep going. I'll fix this while we go.
Okay. Well, so I just wanted to back this up a little bit. So you're saying back to risk, need, responsivity, and I saw it's Miranda Schweitzer. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
She goes by Mindy.
Mindy.
Yeah.
But officially Miranda's her legal name, right?
Mirinda.
Really? Wow. Okay. So Mindy Schweitzer.
Like Ms. or Mrs.
Doctor.
Ms. Dr. Schweitzer?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I think her married name is Smith, so her maiden name is Schweitzer.
But she holds on to that Schweitzer, though, because she earned that, right?
Both. Yeah. She holds both.
Don't take on that Smith. Screw that guy. I'm kidding.
Actually, I think Mr. Smith is very nice. He's a nice guy.
There's no way that anybody Mindy is hanging out with isn't a great guy.
So true.
Yeah, Mindy's awesome.
So
but
true.
I'm going to go for the switch here real quick. So
okay, what can I not talk?
You tell a joke or something.
Well, So I'll just share that when I was so I had sat in on like a 3-day training with Mindy actually, and one of the things she was talking about. So this risk, just again for people who are listening to this, so the risk, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jamie, is targeting the who, the delivering more intense interventions to higher risk offenders. The need is the what, targeting the, like you said, the criminogenic needs to reduce the risk for recidivism, and then the how is the responsivity. So using CBT approaches, matching the model of service and to the offender. And then there's the how well, which is the fidelity, which is kind of why you're here, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So deliver the treatment services as they were designed, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So Jeff and Justin are here. You're going to be observing them, yep. Right? And we'll just have to get this on record here for the podcast. Was that not the greatest group that you just witnessed me run a moment ago?
You guys... Mace really set the bar really high. It was a phenomenal group.
This isn't new, though. I always know his groups are better. He sets the bar, and then I just go, yeah, I'm going to learn from that.
I haven't conceded yet.
No, it was a fantastic
He does
group.
good.
He did a wonderful job. He's a very, very skilled facilitator.
What did he do well in terms of, I guess, implementing it the way that it's supposed to be ran?
He did a really, really good job. We look for a lot of different things when we do fidelity checks. So he used a lot of really good specific verbal praise. So when somebody did something well, he told them not just good job, but he told them exactly what they did well. So that was really nice to see. He also modeled the skill that he was teaching them today. So that was really, really nice. He did a very clean, here's the steps of the skill, and here's how you do it, and I'm going to actually get up and show you how to do it. So that was really, really clean, really well done. What else?
I mean,
there were so many. I literally wrote like pages of...
Yeah, there's so many good stuff. She ran out of ink. Really what the.
I guess what I want to know.
You're asking a question.
What should I do tomorrow?
What am I
I'm just trying to feed my ego.
Yeah.
Like you're asking, okay, what makes a good cognitive behavioral therapy group, right?
Well, kind of. I mean, we can address that too, but I guess I specifically wanted to know if you were docked any points for having an ego that rivaled our commander in chief. You know, I would think that like that would probably dock you some points, so that all in all you ran kind of an average group. Is that the case?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Dang.
See,
it was that good then.
It's
All
not
right.
being conceited if you back it up, son.
Okay.
If it's just reality, I mean, I'm just
Fair enough.
identifying facts here, bro. Yeah.
He was super confident, and it was really nice to see that too. That was actually another strength of his.
The confidence,
really yeah.
For sure. No, I mean, obviously, Mace is a stud when it comes to running groups. It's just he knows it and lets everybody else know. You know, so I mean, you kind of have to occasionally try to take him down a peg. It never works. But occasionally we try to try humbling him.
I will say that when I give feedback, I always start with, what do you think you did well? And most people skip that entirely and go into everything they think went wrong. And he didn't. He was like,
yeah, here's what I
believe you.
I run good groups.
Would you like me to alphabetize my list of what I did well?
Let me get that list out for you. Oh, no. Well, no, I really appreciate it. And this is, so for anybody who's listening, this is a big reason. I think it was, when did we go to it was last year.
May.
So May of 2017, we went to the University of Cincinnati and attended the cognitive behavioral interventions for sex offenders training. It was a 4 or 5 day training.
4 day
training.
Felt like 5, didn't it?
No, Sarah Botner.
Maybe for her, maybe for our trainer.
For her, it is, yeah. Poor Sarah.
Felt like a month.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was, it was interesting because Jeff and I had talked about this before, and, Jeff has really given me the reins in terms of, clinical direction for Alpha, and, really kind of helping, I think one of the things I've come around to is this idea that evidence-based practice and things that we know to be effective. So what you're talking about where, I mean, okay, there's nothing we can do. We're going to just throw our hands up, lock them up, and throw away the key. That's not a solution. And nevertheless, I think we have a huge responsibility. I mean, I work with justice-involved clients across the board. So I deal a lot with, drug offenders and a ton of clients that are just in the criminal justice system. But I feel a particular passion towards sex offenders because I think it's a lot of responsibility to be a sex offender therapist. I mean, we're basically, I try to educate people and say, I understand that you don't agree with their offenses, of course, and you may even want them to be locked up and throw away the key. Unfortunately, that's not a reality. They're going to be coming out. They're going to be coming to your community. You want them to get the best care possible. And in sex offender treatment, more than anywhere else, I feel like it's a flavor of the month type of treatment approach.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, they're like, well, we're doing equestrian therapy here.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, oh, well, we're reading chakras and crystals. I mean, nothing against chakras and crystals. I'm just saying, I mean, I just want to make sure that what we're doing is the best medicine we can deliver for the clients that we have. And I think UCCI does a great job with that.
Yeah, we really try hard to, every decision that we make, every product that we develop for use in the field, all the work that we do, we really make a strong effort to make sure it's tied to the evidence and what we know works. And if we know that something doesn't work, then, we avoid those things, and we recommend that others do too.
Why do you think that clinicians get so caught up in that, or programs or agencies that we are going in this direction, and even though you say this works, and even though you have evidence to prove that this works, we're going to stick with our thing? Why do you think that happens?
There's probably a lot of different reasons. On a practical side, I think a lot of places don't have a lot of resources, and making those big changes is an investment. A lot of time, a lot of effort, some finances in some cases. So I think the resources is probably a big part of it. Another part of it is, I think sometimes what we find in the research, there's just a little bit of a lag in how long it takes to make its way out into the field. And so as we learn more and more about what works with offenders, we're still working with people who have been working with offenders for a really long time. They were trained in a different way. They've seen value in it in their work, over time. And so switching to something that's new or different, or not something that they've worked with for some, they've 20, 30 years in the field, and they haven't worked with that. I think there can be some resistance and some like, well, why would I switch to this when this has been working for me for so long?
Right.
So I think there's a number of kind of obstacles that can come up for different agencies.
I think that's the sweetest way I've ever heard that explained.
and that she was nice in.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. Like, I can recognize some of the second portion of what you said in myself. So I mean, the first thing is resources. We did have to purchase plane tickets and pay for the training and go out there and hang out with you fine folks for a few days. And, the kind of the training costs and getting staff up and running. But the second piece is, I don't know, anytime I've been introduced to any kind of a curriculum change, I've noticed my own sort of internal responses, like to push back a little bit. And I don't know if that's just kind of normal human response to change, or because I feel like I've invested a lot of my time and energy into approaching it this way, and it seems to be working. And who are you to tell me that? So yeah. I can feel some of that stuff, but then at the same time, I guess if the evidence, which is, ultimately what we're doing here, if the evidence says that this is what works, I kind of have to confront that in myself and tamp down my own ego, and it's all right. This is what it is. And so, I think Justin had something to say too, but when we first got trained up in it and we came back, I was actually a little bit intimidated to run the curriculum. And I remember I'd briefed my groups on it, kind of like, all right, here's the deal. I got to read this script, and I have to have you guys do these role plays. Like, sorry, I caught myself apologizing. But the thing is probably 2 weeks deep into running it, I love it. And the clients responded way better than I thought they would too. I was thinking I was going to be dealing with a ton of blowback and well, this is stupid. And that hasn't really been the case. People tend to be on board, and it actually helps me. There's a lot of times where we'll have maybe a group that's pretty treatment savvy, and the group almost runs itself. But when you get new group members without a curriculum in place, like CBISO, it gets easy to not go over the stuff that the newer people need to comprehend to fully understand, sex offender treatment. And it's easy to gloss over it. And so I think this addresses it. Everybody comes in, everybody learns these time-tested principles. Cognitive behavioral therapy works pretty well, everywhere. And I don't know, But it was an adjustment period for me. And I think a lot of people dig their heels in, before they even just, suck it up and give it a shot.
Yeah, I think there can be some resistance to change just generally, right? I mean, we all have our routines and things that we know work for us and things that we do every day. I mean, I'm like every morning I get up and the first thing I do is make coffee, because if I don't, I feel like I might die without it, right? Yeah. And so if somebody was like, we're going to change that and we're going to switch you over to orange juice, I would be like, no, we're not. No, we're not. My experience has been great with coffee every day, you know? Right. So, I mean... And you could show me lots of evidence that it'd be better if I switched over to something else. And I'd be like, but I kind of want the coffee, you know, because it's what I love.
But if it was Adderall, then...
there's that knee-jerk reaction like you're saying. I think there's the resistance part and just change is weird.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, with just certain populations, like when we talk about sex offenders, I think people go way off into overthinking it. So wait a minute, your program's going to be more simple and more basic and like what you deal with. Well, no, we're dealing with sex offenders. We got to talk about their offense 24/7. And if we're not doing that, they're a risk. So part of it for me was when we do process groups before, you know, I'd be thinking throughout the day, what am I going to talk about tonight? What's the topic going to be? Which I like having the curriculum because it eliminated that. I don't have to stress all day for one. Yeah. But also, I won't lie, when we first got to the training, started looking through this stuff, my first thoughts were like, some of this is so basic. Like, they're going to make fun of me. Like, what do you mean? How to take criticism? How to...
Like how basic
Yeah, I was just like, they're not going to... They love it, though. Like, the first few groups I ran, everybody started getting engaged in this, or people speaking up that never did before, and it gets really good discussions going. I was surprised by that, which I think that's... Now that we're looking back, I think that's spot on, though, because that's ultimately what a lot of them do struggle with. Because I'll think something's a simple concept in my head, and then sometimes people in the group had no clue, or they don't know how they're coming across, or they don't get it.
Well, dude, it takes care of the problem of the wallflowers in group as well.
Yeah.
Because everybody participates every group.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's nice.
I think you both have raised a similar point in that what I see a lot, because we visit, you know, lots of institutions, we work with lots of professionals, we see lots of offenders, and what I notice a lot is the offenders really do like it. I can tell when I show up at a group that I've never been to, none of these people know me. When an offender calls back to something they learned 5 weeks ago, and he says, you know, when I was in, you know, my cell last night and this dude came in and this is how I handled the situation, and he starts throwing out some of the skills, like, that's got to be very rewarding for a facilitator, you know.
That they actually like remembered something.
They got it. Yeah. They used it. They saw value in it. That's clear evidence that you made an impact. And these guys get excited. Like, they're really happy that they've found a way to navigate these situations that have been in the past really difficult for them. And I think for facilitators, it can be like, you feel like, I don't know how this is going to work. But when you start working with the curriculum and you have moments like that where you're like, okay, they're getting it and they're using it when I'm not making them get up and do it. Like, they're out in the yard, or they're, you know, out in the community, and they're doing things that I've taught them in this group. They're getting these skills and they enjoy it. They like it. So
yeah, and the simplicity behind it, like Justin said, I think can be intimidating, because if I go onto like, and I'm not going to knock any particular model or anything like that, but I think traditionally, if I look at sex offender treatment, there's assignments, right? When we do practice work, we do homework, of course, but the homework is simple. But the value of that homework is not in what I write on the paper. The value of the homework is what I apply to my real life.
Yeah.
And so too often, I think we get, and I mentioned this before, and I'm kind of going out on a limb of my personal thoughts of, we use this word internalization a lot. And how I've kind of framed this in my mind is, I used to think it was, did he understand it? And that was it. Yeah. So a client showed a cognitive understanding of this, but now I think it has three parts to it. I think it's, did cognitively they understand the material, understand the concept of whatever I was trying to teach them? Practically, did they apply it to their own lives? And then after they practically applied it, did they have emotional appreciation for that intervention? Now, if you have all three of those components, that person's going to internalize that, because that's how I've learned things in my own life. If I just look at the value of cognitive behavioral therapy, we talked about worry last week, and anxiety, and dealing with anxiety and fear. And I said, worry is a very functional type of thing. If I worry about something, it motivates me to solve that problem. I solve that problem. My worry goes away. well, I've learned that, but I've never really put words to it. This is, I learned that, but I've learned that, okay, if I think that I'm worried and then I go into problem solving mode, I solve that problem, I'm no longer worried. There's my value. I get emotional relief, and that's great. And some people, the linear, they don't think that in that linear process, and they need help getting that way. Because if they did think linearly like that, they wouldn't be in our groups. Right. They wouldn't be sitting in front of us if they had that kind of thought process. And we have to accept that.
Well, the other thing, too, I think is important is sometimes they don't have appropriate models. So it's not like they've had a chance to observe a pro-social skill and then apply it to see how it would work, to get that natural reward that, hey, when you're pro-social and you're easy to deal with, when you can be cool, people like it, right? So it's automatically rewarding, but they haven't seen the model. And so when you bring them in and you say, like, we're going to model it, it might really be the first time they've ever seen that actually, you know, play out where they're aware of what's happening and like, oh, okay, this is like how people deal with frustration or, you know, something that's stressful for them, how they deal with anxiety. And then when you make them do it, it really might be the first time they've ever done that.
Well, some of the groups. Oh, sorry, cut you off.
Just, you know, they have to kind of go through that process to get the reward, to get that good feeling, to get that link. Like, oh, when I do this behavior, it works. It's beneficial for me, so I want to keep doing it.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point, because as you were saying that, one of the things I thought of, you and Mace were talking about that, is I think one of the first things where I saw light bulbs going off as I started to introduce this, which surprised me a little. I think sometimes we take it for granted, but when it gets to the behavior chain analysis, where this is talking about there's a situation, then in the situation I have certain thoughts, based on those thoughts I have certain feelings, and based on those feelings I have actions, and then there's consequences.
Right.
I was surprised how much everyone struggled when we got to the feeling part. Like, what emotions are you feeling?
Yeah.
Because they just went into more of explaining the situation. Like, they didn't grasp that.
Or listing a thought.
Yeah. Like, so when you hand out the feeling faces worksheet and people are like, oh, what? I didn't know there was this. I was like, yeah, there's way more than that. That's where a lot of them initially just, well, how can I deal with anxiety? If I don't even know what anxiety is or how to label it, like, what does that feel like in my body? What does that feel like emotionally? That surprised me. So that's where I realized, sometimes taking a step back from this more in-depth stuff is a really good idea.
You were talking about how when you first looked at the curriculum, you cringed a little bit when you saw, you know, that one of the skills we were teaching is responding to criticism, because it's almost like, duh, everyone knows how to do that. But like Jamie's pointing out, like, well, you know, like not really.
Not really.
And so it's, as we're going through and doing so part of the curriculum is role plays if you're a listener. And, I guess it surprises me how much some of the dudes struggle, getting it, kind of like it's like, oh, this really is new for you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that I think that I've assumed to be common knowledge among most people that really just isn't the case. So it's taught me that I kind of need to start back here a ways, you know, and not assume that everybody knows. And when Mace was talking about the complexity of some of the curriculum based workbooks that, you know, we used to use, or maybe other programs currently use, it kind of makes me think that the complexity is more to appease us as the clinician and make us feel better. Like, okay, here, this is a super I mean, again, I'm trying not to throw any particular workbook under the bus, but there's some that, like, I'm not sure I understand. But it almost feels like, well, this is super complex and there must be a lot to it. Clearly this is state of the art, cutting edge, and we're moving past this Mickey Mouse stuff. But I mean, the Mickey Mouse stuff isn't Mickey Mouse stuff. It's the building blocks that a lot of these dudes haven't had from the get-go.
Hey, you can't move on to the other stuff if you don't have that.
I'll be the first to admit that, though. I remember at one point we thought if our relapse prevention plan is longer, somehow that's more meaningful.
Remember that one you wrote up? The one that you wrote?
Yeah.
Back when we were at the group
like
home? It's like 60 pages.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But you know, it's like in this one, and this is, so this, I was convinced, but one of the interventions that was in here, one of the lessons that really made an impact for me was, it's not uncommon in sex offender treatment programs for a client to have to do an autobiography, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I've worked with clients who say they went through it and, I have my autobiography, and it's a minimum of 30 pages. I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to read that thing. Like, you know, and I guess they're reading it, you know, and they take up 2 groups to read it. And somewhere in there, I've got to pick these little granules out of like why that would be meaningful, right? Well, so the lesson on life history factors and lifestyle factors was so great.
Covers it.
Yeah.
It covers it, and it's a half a page for each of those, so it's all on one page. And it makes so much sense. You know, a lot of times we get wrapped up in what happened with the offense, what happened with the offense, what happened with the offense. And I have to start asking, I'm like, I don't know why that matters, especially if the offense was 10 years ago. Look, the way that the assignment articulates is so simple, but so elegant and to the point that it makes an impact. They say, look, there's life history factors that happened to you that were beyond your control, that you probably didn't have anything to do with, that contributed to your decision to offend. Likewise, there was lifestyle factors going on around the time that you offended that also contributed to that. Can't do anything about the historical stuff because you don't have a time machine, but we can identify whether or not you've maintained any of those lifestyle factors in your current life. What are those? That is such a great concept to talk to one of those guys about versus, you know, what were you thinking back then? Well, what does it matter? I mean, you know, like, and then the proverbial, you should have thought about that when you offend. Like, okay, thanks,
You're
Dad.
fixed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I've spent a lot of sessions caught up talking about, you know, like what happened to you when you were 9 years old, when currently like the risk factor right here and now is the dude can't keep a job because he's still stuck in prison mode, and he called his boss a bitch or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so like maybe this responding to the feelings of others skill step thing could be more applicable because this dude's actually dealing with this right now. If we can get him to keep a job, his risk goes down.
Right.
I don't know how much his risk goes down if we finally conclude that, oh yeah, when you were 9 you went through this, and so maybe like I don't know.
Yeah, so you guys are hitting on that like need principle, right? So you think about when we do assessments on offenders, we're assessing for anything that would be related to committing more crimes in the future, right? That's what we want to know. And so one of the biggest predictors is criminal history, but it's a static factor. So what we mean by that is you can't change it. So you don't want to target it. You don't want to spend a lot of time on it. You have a finite amount of time with these people. You want to target the things that are dynamic, the things that you can change. So those risky situations, the skills that they don't have, those antisocial thoughts, values, beliefs, those are the things that we kind of, should prioritize because of that's where you can make the difference.
Right.
I love that you're saying this right now because the podcast that's going to be released next, we talk a lot about specifically working on dynamic risk factors and the value in that. So that's well timed. Thanks.
You're welcome. I do what I can.
Yeah.
Well, and for the longest time, like how long would you say it took you? Because I kind of drank the Kool-Aid early on, but for you, how long did it take you to come around to this idea that, okay, accountability is not everything? Because in sex offender treatment, it's huge. Like it's like, if we don't get through this, then you can't do it, right? And I've always said, I was like, okay, look, let's just take client A, client B. Client A totally denies their offense. Client B totally accepts their offense. Both of them do the interventions exactly the same way. You're telling me client A is now going to reoffend because they're saying, you know what, I'm not talking about that. And the way that you're breaking it down didn't happen. I'll say, look, if they're reducing antisocial thinking and antisocial behaviors and they got a job and they make good friends, I mean, what does it matter? At one point, it doesn't matter so much because they're still doing the work, right? How long did that take you to come around to that?
Well,
it was a while, right?
A couple of years, probably. I remember you first told me it was at a conference with, I think, Burton.
Yeah.
So Burton was presenting. Is it David Burton? What's that dude's name?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He was presenting. You said that. Bullshit. And it was probably up until a couple of years ago, finally. But I think a lot of that was what I was talking about is my resistance early on to abandoning my holistic approach, and finally getting on board with evidence-based treatment. It's just, I don't like the idea that this, hallmark of treatment has been refuted by contemporary literature. And besides that, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right that denial of offense isn't a risk factor as much, and it doesn't make sense to me that empathy doesn't play a role in predicting recidivism either. So I think that I was having an emotional reaction to facts, and I was paying more attention to. I guess I was just not thinking logically.
Well, those moments are huge though. Like when you have those moments with a client where they come around, it's like, you know what, I did do it. Like that feels good though. Like that's a bonding moment.
It does, yeah.
So I think we value that more. But I think the aspect of, because I definitely feel still like, yeah, if that comes up and it's a part of it, that's a cool, small piece of the pie where some places are like, you're not even moving forward until you say you did it. That's ridiculous.
Well, you're creating
getting hung up
right?
on it. Yeah, because then he's just going to say it. So, well, I can't get to level 2 unless I say that. Okay, I'll say it.
Yep, guess I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we see lots of legislation, even at the state level, where programs don't really have any, leeway in that. Like, if they don't admit to it, then they don't get to participate. They get terminated. So it can be frustrating, even, if you adopt a different perspective.
What a horrible way to...
Crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, especially early on in treatment. Like,
you
got to remember,
you
got to build rapport. Like, I figure like 6 months deep, now I'm starting to learn who the client is, and he's just starting to loosen up a little bit. And you're going to expect somebody to, like, expecting them to take accountability for their offense at the outset of treatment. It's like expecting somebody that would be, like a level 4, a lot of programs do levels, like somebody that's brand new to act like somebody that's a veteran of treatment. And it's just doesn't really match up well.
No.
Yeah.
Get it, but it feels good when they admit it.
I was working with another group recently, and they had similar sentiments about working with the curriculum. Like, it feels weird that we don't make them talk about their offense. It feels weird that, it's okay if they deny it. And simultaneously, I was working with another site in a totally different location, and they were emailing me like, we're trying to get some policy changes at the state level. Can you please help us?
Wow.
Like, they're making us enforce this. Like, they have to admit. And if they don't, they're not going to let them do treatment. And so I was reading all of this research on denial. And so I have a huge stack of articles that I'm going through still, but the bulk of what I found shows that it doesn't impact treatment outcomes. So
it's no matter how many times I hear it, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But I finally conceded. I roll with it now, and I'm on board. I'm totally on board.
You don't want me to send you the big stack of articles?
No, I believe it. And I've seen the articles. It's just like, I want it to be true.
Yeah, there's still a gut reaction, even though I know it's wrong.
Yeah. Yep. I'm on board with it. It's just, it's strange to me. It seems like it should be.
Yeah.
But it's not, so, all right.
Well, it was interesting, the conversation that I recently had with another team. One lady said, it feels like going to the dentist without talking about your teeth. It's weird.
That's a good point, though.
And I was like, that's a neat way to say it. Like, I never thought about it like that. But then one of her colleagues said, I almost feel like it's more for me when I want them to talk about certain things because I'm interested. Like, I want to figure it out. I want to know what goes on in their mind. I want to know, how they work. And, in the end, she was like, it took me a long time to get to where I feel like I'm interested because of the type of work I do, but it doesn't help the client. And so it was hard. She was like, it's so hard for me to separate the two. That was her personal experience, which I thought it was like neat to hear, a group of people.
Well, on the flip side, one thing I had struggled with initially when we had more of the typical curriculum, taking pieces out of workbooks and here's your assignment, is what I had a hard time with. Say you have someone come into a session and a family member just died or something like that. We're talking about that. He's bawling. I'm like, oh, okay, well, here's your assignment about article or about cycles. So here you go. I'll talk to you later. It's like, that didn't help him at all. Right. We weren't addressing anything that he was going through, anything he was dealing with. It's just like, oh, that sucks, man. Well, we got to hurry and get this assignment done. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's what I had a hard time with sometimes.
Kills the flow of.
Or if you did focus on it, well, then now moving to the next level, it's going to take even longer because we were processing this. We didn't do your assignment. Where now, we can tie it into that. Mm-hmm. You can just meet them with where they're at, as opposed to having to fit their life into a box.
Like we're supposed to do.
Yeah, like therapy.
Therapy.
Well, and even to the denial piece and the empathy piece is kind of funny too, because you and I have talked about this, and have you started that book, Behave by Robert Sapolsky?
No, I haven't yet. Still finishing Sapiens.
Super, super interesting stuff. Like empathy, everybody thinks it's like the holy grail of this stuff. And I've long advocated, and it was, I think you taught me this, is what it came from, was, this, it's not always as great as we think it is. And there was a study in there that he was referencing. It was done out of the University of, Buffalo or somewhere in New York, I think, and what they did was they were showing that, the release of oxytocin, whatever, that is, that causes empathy. So yes, makes you have empathy for one person, but then makes you violent towards another person what
does?
The empathy. So they were saying, they gave a great example, and they said, okay, so if I have a lot of empathy for a person and they were referencing kind of like contemporary stuff. The study that they did was they had students who were telling a story, and people were listening to this story, and it was basically these students were poor. And the conclusion that a lot of people drew, there was two conclusions that were drawn out. Either that the student was down on their luck and was scared because they didn't have any money, or the student was low on funds but didn't really care about it. And then they were asked, the people who were listening to the story were asked to that the student who was poor, you could administer hot sauce, pour it on like this other person to like make them suffer a little bit, to help this other person, and without knowing who this person was. So the people who felt like this student just was nonchalant, didn't care about it, and whatever, they didn't develop empathy for that person because they didn't hear his down and out story. But the students who they thought were down and out and who were really scared because they didn't have any money and would get $20,000, they were more than willing to hurt that other person to help this poor down and out
really
kid, right? So they were comparing this to like a lot of the stuff with like people transitioning and everything right now. The whole like if I'm transitioning to being a man or a woman or something like that, and the vitriol that you see towards other people who aren't buying into that. So like it was talking about Jordan Peterson and all these other things, and they were saying, look, so a lot of people have empathy for these individuals. They really say these people are struggling and going through a really rough time in their lives. And because of that, they act out towards others who they think are persecuting them, and totally fine with inflicting violence on other people.
So in using empathy to be compassionate towards the perceived victim, they're acting psychopathic towards
selective empathy,
alleged perspective. Yeah, selective empathy.
Yeah. Correct. So that's what they were trying to say. And they've shown this with mothers, of animals who develop empathy for their children, who will then it's like, if you see a moose in the wild and she's got kids, you're dead, or something like that. Like, because I think that you're a threat, and because if I think that, I'm much more willing to act out towards you violently. So and in that book, Robert Sapolsky talks a lot about that. He was talking about testosterone gets a bad rap and all these other things. I mean, it gets really scientific. I guess the point there is though, a lot of this stuff is these things that we've been, these stalwarts in treatment that we say, this is what really matters, I think has a whole lot more to do. It makes us feel good. Like it makes you feel good when an offender says, yeah, I did it, and here's all the things that I did, and man, I can't imagine what that poor girl or guy is going through. I mean, that feels good to hear that from a person who's taking accountability. But it's not about me. It's not about me feeling good as to whether or not you're going to reoffend. Like what matters is, can I administer a treatment that's going to help you not reoffend? If that's my goal, not for me to feel good. So sometimes I think directionless groups that, I mean, I've sat it and man, this is one of the most amazing groups I've ever seen, and there's tears everywhere and everything. I'm like, I don't know if anybody made any progress or can take any skill from that group and practically apply it to their lives, other than that was so inspirational.
Admitting stuff's good.
So I think looking at that is really important to just say the research there's plenty of it out there to suggest that a lot of these things we think are 100% to be true. We just got to question them a little bit and just have some humility. I mean, the behavioral health field needs way more humility. It drives me nuts. We would never ever go into a medical doctor and he's saying, okay, I'm going to do this treatment because I like it.
Yeah.
There's no evidence behind it, but I like it, and I'm going to do it.
Well, there's actually evidence that suggests it doesn't work, but I like doing it. So
I mean, the thing is, I don't think that the medical field is like blind to that. I think that a lot of times doctors, especially maybe some of the older doctors that went to medical school 30 years ago, unless they're really on the up and up, they might be treating their patients based on 30-year-old research. And so like it kind of happens in every field. It happens in nutrition. It happens in I'm big into working out, and I can't tell you how many conflicting workout articles I've read about this is the best way to do this. And then it's the exact counterpoint. No, this is better. Nutrition, same thing. This way of doing it's the best way to get lean. And then the exact counterpoint. And I mean, it gets super confusing and the waters get extra muddy. Ultimately, the thing that we have to hang our hat on is what the evidence bears out. And maybe it's within the realm of possibility that, 15 years from now, we'll find out that the contemporary research that we're using today is dated because we somehow messed up this research methodology. And, oh, look, denial actually does matter. Who knows? Right. Mm-hmm. But until that comes,
that won't happen.
Well, it's so to speak, dude. But until then, we follow what the current research shows. And so we have some risk factors that yield and can predict risk to some degree. And then you guys, the Cincinnati folks, you developed interventions to help address those risk factors. So, that's what we do. We put our ego aside. We put the feel goods aside and address risk.
Yeah. And I think too, to your point, definitely keep testing it because there's so many factors that play into it. Just because it works here doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in another state. They could have a culturally different population and maybe it doesn't work as good for them. So there are pieces of it where you do have to keep testing it, which is why we want to do evaluation with your site and some other sites where we can make those comparisons and say, hey, are we having an impact? And if we are having an impact, great. What are we doing well? What's working about this that we can share with other people? And if we're not having an impact, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and see what pieces might be missing here. So we do the fidelity
that's
checks.
Perfect.
Which, in my opinion, that makes you guys, the Corrections Institute, the University of Cincinnati, head and shoulders above the rest. Because as much as somebody says, this is the model that you need to do, like, I just don't see, you don't see any follow up. It's like, okay, so are there any research to support that? Not really. Okay, do you guys have any fidelity monitoring? No, we don't do that. What about a training? No, we just have a workbook. I don't know how good I feel about that. I mean, it was nice to send a client off into the sunset with an assignment that was 30 pages, and then they come back and I review it with them and I have a good discussion, and I don't know how much that impacted them, particularly when it's talking about a lot of stuff in the past. But you coming here, observing our group, most amazing group you've ever seen, and then and offering us feedback, right? So the only reason I've ever been able to get to the point where I do groups well is because I've sucked at one point or another. It's not like I was like killing it from the day one. Part of this was me exercising some humility and saying, I want to do good groups, and I take feedback and I'm going to apply that the next time, and I'm going to get a little bit better. And I've learned a whole lot more from my failures than my successes. I mean, if every time I nailed a group, what's the point? I mean, I wouldn't be doing it. So I like the negative feedback because, well, not negative, it's just critical feedback on what I can improve on, because then I'm delivering the better medicine. Because I get what you're saying in the medical health field, but there are some things that are constants, right? Like there's some things that every doctor's doing right now, like everybody else, because there's so much evidence behind it, right?
Hope so.
And I just remember a slide, I actually pulled it up while we were chatting here. And this was from Mindy's presentation. On this, it was saying there are more than 40 published meta-analyses. Those are studies of correctional treatment literature. And it says results have replicated with remarkable consistency. There is considerable support for the RNR model, risk-need responsivity framework, across quantitative reviews of the literature. I mean, I just don't know how much more evidence you need at that point.
It's hard to argue with.
Well, right. And I say, so great. Like that people should be jazzed about that. People should say, wow, okay, great. We have something that's going to work. And I think there's I feel good with this, and I've anecdotally had success. And I won't argue with people. I believe they probably have had good outcomes. The problem with that is kind of this, the fallacy of authority problem is, as good as you are, I can't replicate you. You're one person.
Right.
How am I going to replicate that in my agency? So you can do a presentation about how awesome you are, and I'll agree with you, but I'm not you. Yeah. I don't have your personality. I don't have your knowledge, and I can't do this. Can we develop a curriculum, which I believe you guys have done? I mean, literally, it tells you what to say to clients, what to write, what to go through, that is going to render the most positive outcomes.
It removes the individual therapist as a variable.
Right. Like I need 25 years to be good at something, right? Which again, anybody who's been in treatment that long, you're going to be awesome. And you're going to be one of the best therapists I've ever seen. Unfortunately, I've got 2 years, and I suck. So what can I do now to start making an effect on this? And, can I get better over time? And all of my, initially, it's a little robotic. Sure. Of course it's robotic because there's a curriculum, there's a script. There's a very, particular format. But once I've done that a few times, I throw my personality back in there, and then we got it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. That was something I ran into, which was funny. I caught myself kind of lying to myself in my head. So the whole thing was when we were out at the training, and they're like, you're going to read it. Like, you're actually just going to read it. My first thought was like, well, then it's just going to look like I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not going to seem genuine, which sometimes I still get a little worried. And I was like, I was thinking about this, and Greer was like, well, how can I make it look like I'm not looking down, or how can I read it before and know it really well, make it look like I know what I'm doing?
You got Google glasses on.
Yeah. Yeah. So the whole thing was, I was thinking, well, it's going to look like I don't know what to say. I was like, you don't know what to say. You don't know what the lesson is. That's the whole point. You read it. It tells you what to say. It removes that. So I was like, having this internal battle for no reason, because the whole point.
Dude, I just addressed that with the clients. I was like, hey, look, I suck at this right now, let's figure it out. Watch.
It goes better if I read it. Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because I don't know if they felt compelled to rally around me. I remember after I'd run my first couple of groups, good job, Jeff. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I think the authenticity is, it gets you a long way with people if you're trying to, help them make changes in their life.
Yeah.
And, I hear that a lot from people that we work with, that I feel so weird, just it's such a formula and it feels so generic, and I feel weird just reading it. I don't know what I'm doing. And my response to that is always, you're modeling exactly what you want them to do. You're doing something new. It feels uncomfortable. It feels awkward. And you get in there and you do it and you get better. And they are here to do the exact same thing. Learn something new. It's going to feel really awkward. And they're going to have to just get out there and try it, And so you're modeling that for them in a way that's really honest and real.
That's why they call it a practice.
That's right.
Well, it's a therapeutic practice, son. Come on now.
That gives me a good way to maybe explain that to clients that initially might feel like it's robotic as well. Anytime you're learning a skill that takes effort, like Justin plays the guitar. And if Justin were going to give me guitar lessons, who's never played in my life, he's probably going to take a systematic stepwise approach to kind of maybe, I don't know anything about instruments, teach me the notes probably first off, but it's going to kind of take some kind of structured approach. He's not just going to play Stairway from Heaven and say, okay, play that,
mainly because I can't.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. You're off to the races kind of thing, as opposed to how do I even start the car? How do I open the door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of instruction I'd need if you're going to hand me guitar.
Sure. Yeah.
What hand
Step
do I
one.
even hold it with?
Yeah.
What do I do?
Well, we preach that a lot. That's the thing. Therapists say that all the time. This is going to be new to you. You just need to be patient with it. And rarely do we get an opportunity to genuinely practice that and then embrace it and just say, yeah, I'm not good at this right now, but I'm gonna get good at it. I guarantee I'm gonna get good at it. And you will. You will get better at this over time as long as you stick with it and take it. And then I do a lot of fidelity monitoring, and I'll get just given behavioral based feedback on increase this, decrease this, and people take offense to it. I'm like, I'm not being mean. I'm trying to help. That's, and for therapists, it's weird. It's not as simple. It's not as simple as something like the medical profession. I have to, I've got to listen to your session with this client. It's going to be a little bit awkward, or somebody has to sit into my group, and that's going to be a little bit awkward too. But the more comfortable you get with those things, now it's second nature to me. And so then after a while, it doesn't even bother you anymore. And being critiqued by other people is a good thing. Just not doing well, learning from your failures and it's not even a failure. What is that? What I say, it's not, you don't lose, there's no losers, there's only lessons.
Learners.
There's
something
no
like
losers,
that. There's learners.
Yeah. Which total cliche, but absolute truth though at the same time. It has a lot of meaning to me. Besides
that, if you're a therapist listening to this podcast, practice what you preach. You ask clients to be open to feedback, right? I mean, maybe you should also.
Right.
Yeah, and it makes you sensitive too. I mean, if you're observing people, right, you kind of like one step removed, you just put yourself in the other position and you think, oh, like, yeah, it is awkward to be in that position, and you have to be sensitive to those kinds of things. And it's nice to be in the hot seat sometimes where you feel like, oh, yeah, it's a good reminder of what this feels like and what our clients feel like every time they walk through the door.
I'll get my chance on Thursday when you're looking over my shoulder.
Yeah, shortly after I started, I had it because groups terrified me. I didn't like that. Well, especially because the first one I ever sit in is Mace's to see how it goes. And he's like,
it's like the Tony Robbins show.
Yeah, it was like flames and a huge production. But so I just felt dumb in a lot of my groups, and it's kind of cool because a little ways in, I'm getting to know some of my clients, and one of them just said, I thought it was really cool when I first started. You were kind of nervous in your groups. And I was like, really? He's like, it just made you human. Like, it was cool that you've kind of admitted, like, I don't know what to do here. It was just cool because it felt like we were all like the same. Huh. So that kind of stood. So like you're saying, just kind of owning it. Hey, this is new to me. I'm going to read. I'm probably going to stumble over some of the words, just laugh a little or whatever. But you make it more real.
Yeah. Well, so how do people get a hold of you guys?
They can look on our website. You
Which
can just
is?
Google us, because I can't remember the website off the top of my head.
What should they Google?
University of Cincinnati Corrections Institute.
There you go.
Yeah. And
I wonder how people know how to spell Cincinnati right out of the gate.
No,
if they're not from there.
They don't got it. Here, hold on. I got you.
It is a tricky one.
Like everybody can spell Mississippi, but Cincinnati throws people for a loop.
So it's www.uc.edu/corrections. Simple.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when we post it up, I'll put it in the little description part too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, email at corrections.institute@uc.edu, and they have the 513-556-7765. So, yeah, I mean, I just say anybody listening to this, I mean, it's a big change for sure, but UCCI, I mean, they are great people and fun to work with, obviously. And I think if you're genuinely if your intention is to genuinely help your clients and make an impact on reducing recidivism, if you're doing corrections work with, justice involved clients, I mean, this is the way to accomplish. I mean, I just haven't seen a better, I mean, that's why we reached out to you. I did plenty of research.
You.
I mean, you guys do a great job, and I'm just saying that. I mean, I'm really impressed with Mindy, and I looked at the stuff, and I was, really impressed with the whole training, and it really pushed me to challenge myself, and it's made us. I think it's made us all better clinicians, certainly a better agency. So yeah,
we love hearing that. You guys are awesome.
Yeah,
appreciate you coming on.
And this is Jamie's first podcast ever.
All right.
In fact, she is asked to do interviews before and denied them because they're not as cool as us.
So is that what it was? Is how cool we are?
Exactly it. I was like, no. Every other person, I was like, no. And then when Mace asked me, I was like, well, I can't say no to Mace.
Nice.
That is so. Awesome. That's no. We really appreciate it. So, do you have anything else you want to say?
No. Thanks for having me. It was fun being here.
No, thank you. Okay, let's wrap this up.
All right, everyone. That's a wrap on episode 15. Hope you enjoyed that episode. We want to thank Jamie for coming out, having some fun with us, being a good sport about coming on the podcast. She did an awesome job. We really appreciate it. Also, next episode coming up here, we'll have this out hopefully within just a few days. We have one of our good friends, all around good person, stud, ultra nice guy, Arlo Gagostine. I hope I'm saying that right, but he is here on the podcast. He is the owner of Competitive Edge Fitness. So we're actually going to have him on the show. We're going to talk about the role that being active or physical activity plays as far as mental health, how to overcome things like not feeling motivated, how to get into more of a disciplined mindset to make things happen. But he ended up coming on the show. Really good podcast. We're going to get that one posted up next. In the meantime, make sure you check us out. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that jazz. It's Guerilla Social Work Podcast. GUERRILLA. Guerilla Social Work. Help spread the word. You guys have been awesome so far. We've really appreciated the comments and the feedback. Keep it coming in. And thanks for spreading the word. And we will see you on the next episode.